The person sitting in their job every day automates and designs the best AI solution to the pain of their work. The person sitting in the job should always be the person who builds the solution for their own problem.
Welcome to the official CultureCon podcast, where we explore how work actually works.
We're your hosts, Zach Blumenfeld
and Nick Lombardino.
Whether you're leading a team, shaping culture, or just passionate about making work more meaningful, you're in the right place.
Each episode will bring you stories, insights, and bold ideas from people who are building better workplaces and better work experiences.
The official CultureCon podcast starts now.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the CultureCon podcast. Today, we are joined by Emily Mabie, Senior AI Automation Engineer for HR and People at Zapier. Emily works at one of the world's leading automation companies, helping HR and people teams leverage AI and automation in ways that create better experiences for employees and managers. Her work sits at the intersection of technology, leadership, human behavior, helping organizations use emerging tools not just to work faster, but to work smarter and more intentionally. What we love about Emily's perspective is that while many people talk about AI in terms of productivity, she focuses on something deeper: how technology can create more space for coaching, connection, and human-centered leadership. Emily, we're excited to have you here. Welcome to the show.
Thank you
Welcome.
so much. Oh, I'm so excited to be here. I'm immediately realizing I don't know how podcasts work. Can people see me and my hand gestures or just hear me?
Well, depending on how they're listening or watching, we always encourage excessive hand motions and gestures.
Fantastic. Then stay
Yeah,
tuned for the finger guns.
even if they're just listening, they can hear excessive hand gestures.
I'm so excited to hang out with you all today and chat a little bit about some AI and adjacent topics.
I mean, AI comes up all the time in the podcast, as you can, I'm sure, imagine. And, there's so much excitement around it. There's so much anxiety around it. I know I straddle both sides of the fence, depending on what day. But as someone who works closely with these tools every day, what do you think people are getting wrong about AI? Like, what's something that we should be talking more about that garnishes more excitement?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, what a great question to kick us off with. I think that something I'm seeing people get wrong a lot right now is they're treating AI like it's a new power source for the exact same factory they've been running since they started their company or they started in their role. And there's this really great story if you look at like turn of the century mills, like take clothing mills for an example. They had steam powered engines running their machinery. Then this amazing invention, electricity, comes to the fore. And they rip out their steam powered engines and they replace them with electric engines. And you know what happened? Absolutely nothing. Productivity didn't change. Worker safety didn't improve, that like really important human element, because all they did was swap one type of motor for another, but everything else in the factory stayed the same. And I feel like I'm seeing that in a lot of cases with AI right now, where people are just kind of bolting it onto existing processes and they might get some individual gains, right? Maybe your mental load is a little bit less because AI is helping kind of grease the wheels a little. But if we're talking about real potential, real transformation to get excited about, like you said, instead of anxious about, I think we really have to think about redesigning the way work happens itself. And I feel like if we don't do that, we're making existing work faster and better, but we're not like fundamentally changing the work. And the way I've been thinking about this a lot when I talk with people is if you're using AI to answer your emails, great use case for AI. AI is helping you answer your emails, but then all you're doing is making more space for you to write more emails. Then you're just running faster on the same treadmill, but you're never really traveling anywhere new. So instead, and this is to your point, connecting to the people work, if you take that time that you've suddenly saved, AI is taking over your email tasks, and you reinvest it in human connection moments like coaching or social calls or one-on-ones, then all of a sudden you're getting somewhere new, like new human connection, new achievements, instead of just running further in the same pattern.
I love that. And I remember your talk at our AI summit just a couple months ago, which was amazing. It was called Making Time for the Human, which I love. So, kind of feeding back into that, I'm curious, like, what are some of the biggest things getting in the way of that human centered leadership right now?
Oh man, number 1 is time. Every single discussion I have with folks to my benefit, I've hugely benefited from the fact that while I own the AI fluency of our entire people department at Zapier, I have also gotten to have one-on-one touch points with every single person in the department to ask them that, what is getting in the way of human-centered, ethical AI use for you right now, and the biggest thing is time. There is and I mentioned this in my workshop, there's always going to be a trade-off. If you as a leader aren't explicit about what you expect the trade-off to be, that doesn't mean there won't be a trade-off, it just means everyone in your department is making their own trade-off, and they're not all running in the same aligned direction, and when people are faced with the barrier of time and capacity, everyone's gonna make a trade-off, and for a lot of people, AI or human-centered leadership or anything that feels like a big lift like that is gonna get pushed to the side, and they're just going to keep doing more of the same or whatever is the lowest mental load, whatever is the easiest, and I think that's really ironic because AI is supposed to give us time back, but it also takes time to learn, it takes time to experiment with, build fluency with, so that you have that space for really human-centered leadership. And so I think it's important to break that cycle. I think it's really important for leaders to model from the front what it looks like to repurpose their time for human-centered connection, human-centered work, and build their AI fluency, take risks, make mistakes publicly and from the front so that everyone else in the organization feels safe to protect the time to do those things too.
Yeah, definitely. And I think on that point of time, one thing I also heard you talk about was around the concepts of automation and delegation. And I think those things are kind of feeding into that time conversation, two things that leaders often struggle with. How do you know whether something should be automated, delegated, or as a leader, I keep it on my own plate? I feel like personally that's something I've always struggled with is like I like to have some control over things. So how do I know when I should be automating, delegating, or keeping that for me to do?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Such a good question. And I think as technological capabilities continue to advance, right? As AI and automation tooling continues to develop, and I know how quickly we ship stuff at Zapier, and I know that's true at many companies. I think that what is possible to automate and therefore what is like practical to automate will continue to grow. However, I think that something that's a really important first filter for me is asking myself, like, is this task degrading someone's quality of work or quality of life? Like, is it something that makes you dream about quitting your job every Monday when you log in? Whether that's me or a teammate, is somebody like fantasizing about avoiding it, wishing they never had to do it again, or just straight up not doing it? And if the answer to that is yes, then that's absolutely getting automated. I wouldn't want to delegate that to someone else just because we don't want to do it. And beyond, like, things that we hate doing, are they incredibly repetitive tasks. Incredibly repetitive tasks are so great for automating, especially sprinkling a little bit of AI in where you need to turn, like, unstructured data, like someone's wall of text email into structured data, like what we need to do next. So, repetitive, annoying. The other one is manual. Even if it's something you love to do and it's like a little one-off, if it's very, very manual, there are opportunities, even if you're still involved, to automate parts of that process. If none of those are true, I think delegating it to someone is certainly within the realm of possibility. Something that I touched on in the talk that you two got to be participants in was this idea of a sort of two by two graph. And on one side, the left hand side going up and down, we have this idea of risk, which is either going to be low, it's not going to be risky for me to hand this off to someone else, or high, it's going to be very risky for me to hand this off to someone else. And then on the other side, the bottom along that x-axis, we've got capability, which from the left goes to low capability, meaning like the person or the AI automation is not going to be incredibly capable of doing something like this based on my data on them, or high capability. They're going to be so capable of doing something like this. And if you sort of imagine that 2 by 2 grid, when we think about when to delegate something, if the risk is pretty low to rip and replace me doing it with someone else or an automation, and the automation or person's capability is really high, they're going to do a great job with it in all likelihood, then it should absolutely be delegated. And something that I think is important to remember, especially as a people pleaser, which I don't think I'm the only one on the call, is, yeah, that sometimes we think of delegating almost as like a harm, like we're asking someone else to do something. But as a people pleaser, I try to remind myself that delegating to people is empowering them to grow in a new area, grow towards new goals, learn a new skill. And as long as you're aligning with their capabilities and like hopefully their desires, delegating can be a huge gift. So if you've got that person on your team, that's great. If you've got an AI automation and you're trying to build its capability, that's also great. But that's sort of the area where if you've got low risk, high capability, that's where I would think of delegating.
Emily, you brought up earlier this idea of human-centered ethical use of AI. Can you give us a sense of like what's going on in your orbit when you talk to organizations or team leads about ethical use of AI? Is there like some examples you can give of ethical deployment and maybe some like non-ethical examples?
Yeah. I mean, I think that if we Google news, comma, AI, we're gonna get a ton of really high stakes front page news, unethical use right in our faces. And I think that those are scary and important, and they should be scary and important. But I think that there's like company level ethical use of AI, which to name a few like rules that I hear myself and others amplifying is like AI does not make decisions. It gives data and it informs. So it might summarize a candidate's profile for risk of fraud, but it won't make a decision to like kick a candidate out of a hiring pipeline, right? This is sort of one of the ways that we stay ethical with AI. We understand that AI is biased, just like humans are biased. And we have to take that into account when we're looking at how we allow AI to interact with decision making and frameworks and data. But I think the piece of ethical AI use that I find a little more interesting and that I do workshops on internally and sometimes with external folks is about your personal ethical stance on AI, especially in companies in tech where there's a universal expectation to use it. So I work at a company where we're all going to be using AI, but we don't dictate what that looks like. We say the expectation is you use it to improve your impact at work. Here's how we measure your performance. All right. So you've got to be using AI to benefit that. Now it's up to you what that looks like. We might give you examples of how other people on your team are using it, and that's great. But there's still a personal ethical stance that you have to develop for how you're going to use AI and then sleep at night. So when I do this workshop, I walk people through a few of mine and how I set up this framework. And one thing that I always think of is I call it like, I call it 90 to 20 or 70 to 1,000, which is like I can write emails by hand. I can respond to emails 90% of the time. It's going to be perfect. And maybe I'll get to 20 of them in a day. Cool. Or I could use AI to help me respond to emails. It's going to probably be 70% perfect, but I could respond to 1,000 emails in a day. So when I'm looking at using AI, one of the things I have to ask myself ethically is like, whose needs are more important here? And what are those needs? If the end user's need is just to get an answer from me on something that AI can find and deploy, like a link to something or a calendar date or something, then reaching 1,000 people and getting them all what they need faster, even if it's not totally perfect, doesn't exactly sound like me, that might be better. Or if the end need of those users is like emotional connection with me as a person, then 90% perfection and getting through them really slowly and only allowing 20 people to hear from me in a day might be better. So these are the sort of balancing acts that I think we all need to go through and be really intentional about. And I'll give you one other example from like constructing the framework. I believe, and I think most of us do, that AI is flawed. It's biased. There's no shortage of research about the ways in which it is biased and flawed, but so too are humans. Humans are deeply flawed, and we have tons of biases, and both of those are risks. So when we're in a situation where we're designing our own ethical stance on using I will give a few scenarios and ask people to work through them and then talk about what comes up for them. And the scenario that I usually start with is writing your own performance review. A lot of us at work, we have to write an individual performance review saying how we are doing at work. And humans have a really fatal flaw in this process, which is recency bias. Every bit of research shows that we're going to be incredible at telling you what we did in like the last 2 weeks, but your performance review is usually 6 to 12 months of data. And we suck at talking about how and what we've done at work more than a month ago. But AI is phenomenal at not falling prey to recency bias. And if you've documented your work across the year, it can write a more fair and unbiased performance review for you of yourself than you might. And so we'll talk about like again, sort of what is the outcome we need, what are the needs of the user, which flaw is a bigger risk here, the human flaw or the computer's flaw, and which one are we going to choose for these different scenarios. So those are just a few ways that I kind of think through the ethical piece and help people kind of define their framework for how they want to use AI.
I really love that. I think you called it was like 90, 20, 70, 1,000, because it's so true. Like Nick and I are very deep down the rabbit hole of AI and use it pretty much every hour of every day, kind of like yourself. And I've noticed since I've really started using AI that I am exponentially more productive. I can see data quicker and faster, like I've never have before, and my output of work is exponentially more. But at the end of the day, I feel more drained than I ever have. And I'm curious, like, how does that kind of affect those ratios and kind of the ethical use of AI just on your personal, like on yourself? Because it's like I'm putting out so much more from an output perspective that at the end of the day, I'm feeling that burnout.
Absolutely. Oh, there is really exciting research coming out of an organization a lot of listeners will have heard of called Culture Amp. They are really big on people data research, and they were premiering a huge data set just a few months ago where they were pointing at the fact that if you are a heavy AI user, like the three of us are, on paper, we might all look completely identical in our use of AI, the fact that we're all like our output is higher, our impact is greater, but there are actually two different people who look almost entirely the same on paper. One group of people are called calibrators, according to Culture Amp. This is what they name them. And they are using all the time savings from AI. So, all that increased output, all that increased impact. Every minute they save, they're actually using for human stuff, like to go have lunch with, Zach instead of doing another AI task or having that really important phone call with Nick to connect on a deeper level. These like human tasks are where the repurposed time goes if you're a calibrator. The other group, I take offense to this a little bit, but they call the other group automators, and they repurpose the time to do more work. And on paper, for about, I want to say it was 18 months, their patterns look exactly the same: increased output, increased impact. And then very suddenly, the automator group that's not reinvesting their time in people hits a wall with burnout, and they face that sudden lack of energy and they completely tap out and their productivity crashes. Whereas the other group sees sustained impact and productivity at that high AI enabled rate. And ever since learning this a few months ago, it's been my focus that every time I'm enabling folks on AI and enabling them on automation and getting that bigger impact at work faster and those efficiency gains, then we talk about the importance of then repurposing that time into having lunch with a colleague or going for that walk with a friend or taking time off because this is how you're going to be able to sustain that impact. So I love that people are noticing that sort of tapped out feeling. I certainly get it too at the end of the day. It's really important to like check for spaces where you can repurpose that time savings and that like, ooh, I got excited, but I'm not gonna let the inertia carry me through lunch because I need to take that break or I'm not gonna last.
So true. And I love how there's now like 2 buckets of people because yeah, I think all 3 of us, at least myself, were in that second bucket. And I actually did something where I downgraded my Claude subscription. I was like at the most expensive plan you could have, and I downgraded it to like the second tier just so it would like purposely shut me out of it. Like I run into the limit almost every day now. So now like I have to pause and then I can focus on having deep, meaningful conversations with Nick and not my sweet, sweet Claude.
I love that as a forcing function. I think that's really important. It's sort of like, if the office lights automatically go out at 4, then you have to go home
Right.
because
Yeah.
they
Same
don't work
concept.
anymore.
Closing time.
I'm
Yeah.
so glad we're talking about this because I think what I've noticed about my emotions, the more and more I use and deploy AI, is that I just have a higher, it's like I have low levels of anxiety that are consistent throughout my day that are directly correlated to my AI use. And I think the self awareness for me is that I'm the type of person who gets excited by the prospect of being able to complete more and more work. You know what I mean? So it's like this the task list is never done, but in my head, I just keep telling myself, oh, dude, just imagine how much better you're going to feel though if you can just do this next email or do this next thing. And then I just get stuck into what Zach described, where by the end of the day, on the surface, you think you'd be super proud of all of the work you completed and have all of this like restorative energy for how you crushed it. But at the end of the day, I'm feeling completely drained and just like more anxious in general from all of the constant like context switching, tool toggling, all that sort of stuff. So I'm so glad we're talking about it because I'm guessing we're not alone. And the more and more we can create some awareness towards, I don't know, just these feelings, the more we can reinvest that time into having more human centered interactions or just creating intentional space for us to step away and find the restorative energy. So, yeah, Zach, I think I'm canceling all of my subscriptions. I'm just gonna go off grid for a while.
Off
Good
grid.
luck.
Good luck. Yeah,
Going analog.
going analog. Okay, Emily, I know predicting the future is impossible, especially now, given how quickly everything's changing. But let's try and fast forward just like 5 years. What do you sense is coming down the pipeline in the world of AI powered productivity? Or like to maybe ask it a different way, like what's the next big thing that you think might blow our minds with AI tech?
Okay, I'm going to give you my professional answer and then my slightly unhinged answer. So, professional answer is 5 years from now. Okay, I think we're gonna look back and realize that there's this moment where we see this shift from individual AI use, so like one-on-one you and Claude, to a more institutional AI use. And to illustrate that, most companies right now that I talk to are in a place where AI is making each person faster. Zach is faster, Nick is faster, Emily's faster. We've each maybe got Claude projects. I've got mine. Maybe we share skills sometimes between us, and that's individual AI. And that's where we are right now as a society learning. But I think what we're going to see in 5 years is that a baseline for companies is where institutionally, when one person discovers something, a new way of working or a new idea, it's deployed to everyone who needs it at the same time. At Zapier, we're experimenting with this already. We've deployed something, some people are calling it like the hive mind, where it's like all of your work goes into a shared space and all of our AI harnesses, Claude, Cursor, Windsurf, Codex can access that same huge piece of company and team and personal context. And that means that it's like automatically a part of everyone's AI setup. So you're building safely, but also quickly. And there's governance baked in. You don't just need good intentions. I think this will all kind of be the bedrock in 5 years, not like something new. It's just going to be the way people are working. AI is monitoring itself, it's suggesting ways to make us work better. And the technology pieces, I think we have them right now. I just think we're going to see them knitted together. So we're beyond this like really messy workplace. I think that's the next frontier. So shared context, skills compounding, intelligence is operating at like a systems level, not individually. Now, that's the professional answer. On the flip side, I have a prediction. This is just my personal take. I think we're going to see. Do you guys know what like the slow food movement is in response to
I
No.
don't.
so fast food took over food productization for a while, right? It was like the cheapest way to make food, massive profits, and there was a really robust market for fast food. So you saw this huge push, fast food was growing faster than like any other food productization. And then a few years later, we see this market response where there's a very real and robust market for what we call slow food. So that's like farm to table or sit down or whatever. Or even like in the grocery store, you'll kind of notice the more like assemble it yourself sort of food. I think we are going to see a sort of slow food market for digital task work. So I think we're going to see that same thing essentially happen with AI, where sort of handcrafted and artisanal digital products are going to be their own robust market once we have stronger differentiation and people can say like, oh, I can tell a person really made that versus AI. I think that we're going to see a market where people are excited to pay for something different really form in like mature alongside the AI digital product and task market.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And I think that's so true. Like when I think about it, a year from now, 2 years, what however long down the road, like if everything's AI and then I get something that's like something as simple as a even today, like if I get a handwritten thank you note or just that personal touch, like it pulls on your heartstrings a little bit. So I feel like that same feeling in an automated world is going to be just emphasized even more. I really like that. That's really a unique, optimistic outlook that I haven't heard too much about yet. But I like that slow food kind of concept.
Yeah, totally. I think it is an optimism as well. And I also think it's an inevitability. I mean, we see vinyl came back, and that's like the least people are always concerned with efficiency. Efficiency is very important and has a place. Digital music is highly efficient, but look how robust the vinyl market is. That's like people feel something about interacting with vinyl that feels different than digital, and they both coexist as markets now, which I think a lot of people did not predict.
Right, right. Nick is helping keep the vinyl industry alive. You should
Are
see
you?
our office.
I brought the turntable into the office like a month ago, and it was in my basement collecting dust for years. And to your point, Emily, like there is something as my day to day is bombarded with just multitasking, just the stimulus that hits our minds every day. There's something so therapeutic about like making an intentional decision to get up and walk away from whatever screen to go pick out a specific type of music and like the tangible record in your hand, your brain before it even starts listening to the music, you're like getting excited because there's like a story in there somewhere. You're like your brain's kind of getting jacked up. And then it's a process to like turn on the receiver, open up the record player, get the needle in the place that it needs to be. And then when it hits the record, there are like these little pops and snaps, and your brain is like, "Oh yeah, here it comes, here it comes." And then you just can't like tune it out. Like if I'm listening to Spotify or what Amazon Music, sometimes I'm like focused on it, but most of the time I'm doing something else and I just want background noise. When I'm listening to a record, I'm like putting it on because I'm ready for that more like intimate analog feel. So if I'm tracking correctly, your big picture optimistic prediction is that we're going to have more and more of these moments where we're like being intentional with being in the analog world and being able to like appreciate those physical moments where, we can trust our intuition and, be together in non-virtual ways.
Yes, I think that right now, I think actually a detrimental part of the narrative right now is that there are sort of these like AI people and then non AI people, right? There are people who are like never AI, and then there are people who are like everything AI. It's a panacea. And I think vinyl's a really good example of how I don't think that's sustainable for us as a society. First of all, many people have no idea how much AI is already in the softwares they use. Second of all, most people who love vinyl, I also have quite a collection of Christmas vinyl. For me, Christmas vinyl, like, I'm not putting Spotify on to listen to Christmas music because for me, Christmas, nostalgia, vinyl, it all kind of hangs together. But I definitely listen to digital music when I'm driving because I'm not going to bring a record player in the car. I think this is sort of more of the future is people being a lot more intentional and differentiating what tool to reach for when. And there will be times where AI will do a better job, be less risky, have more fair outcomes in the future. But then there are going to be times where you want to write a handwritten note. Like it's just not going to do to have AI do it. And I think we will see a future where people feel less like I am or am not an AI person and more I know when I want to put a vinyl on versus I know when I want to use digital music.
Yeah, I love that. I'm curious though, there's a large portion of the population, and I find myself in this sometimes too, that has kind of the fear factor of, giving into someone reading an article that says AI is going to take everyone's job, or kind of the negative outlook, pessimistic outlook on AI. What would you tell someone who has that vantage point? Or is there part of you that, believes in that AI will take all of our jobs or a large portion, and kind of that conversation?
I don't believe that there's a future where fewer people have jobs because of AI, but I absolutely believe that just like the internet replaced the need for encyclopedia salesmen, and those people no longer could have that job, I think we will see that with AI, where AI will eventually be at a place where it does certain jobs, such as those data entry jobs, more efficiently, more effectively, and with less risk than humans. And those people will need different jobs. But I very strongly believe that there's no society in the near future where we have a mass of the population without jobs in perpetuity. I do think when we look at history, there are definitely reset moments when, for instance, like war industries end after war and we see displacement of workers and those people, they're negatively affected. And I think it's frankly really offensive when companies pretend like well, they'll just get a new job. AI will open new jobs. Sure, but like those people still have to live through unemployment, retraining, all of that. So I both want to like be reassuring and be like, those people will get jobs. There will be new jobs. And also acknowledge that like job loss is incredibly hard. Retraining is a huge mental load. Very real people might be affected. I think one of the most important things people can do for their anxiety and for their career futures is to learn what they're talking about. I very frequently connect with people who are anti AI, which I think, to be fair, is a legitimate stance. But when I talk to them, it often becomes very clear that the information they have is from like memes and not from news sources or like trusted publishers. And so my encouragement to folks is like I do think you'll actually reduce your anxiety a lot if you read something from a trusted source that's not AI washing a layoff, that's not telling you the world is about to end or the world is just fine and nothing is changing. And you really settle into like what is true so that you are then more prepared for like what your career's change might look like and what you may or may not want to do to get on board with that.
I love that. That's great. And I love the phrase "the reset" because that's kind of what it is, it seems like. And everything you're saying to kind of back that up makes a lot of sense. Like it is I mean, this is one of the biggest technological advances in humanity, and there will be some changes, a lot of changes. So it's like, let's reset, let's figure out what that new world looks like. All right. Before we get too deep down the AI rabbit hole, let's wrap this episode up. We like to end every episode the same way with allowing our guests to give a shout out to someone from your life, past or present, who's really inspired you and influenced you, made you who you are today. So, Emily, feel free to give a shout out.
I'm going to, and I'm going to take you guys on a storytelling journey with me, and you can edit this however your little heart's desire. But my shout out is going to be for my dad, Dan Mabie. He was for a very long time a firefighter, an EMT down in Chicagoland. And for 25 years, he did that job. And he drove 2 hours each way, commuted. And there is a story that I think of often in my current role, which I think for a lot of people, they might be like, how does AI and automation relate to like saving people's lives at the side of the road during a car accident? But here we go. I feel really strongly. You guys have heard me say it from the stage. I say it on most podcasts and media recordings I get to do. I feel super strongly that the person sitting in their job every day automates and designs the best AI solution to the pain of their work. The person sitting in the job should always be the person who builds the solution for their own problem because they're going to build a better solution than IT trying to understand or engineers trying to understand. They are going to know the complexities of their work better than anyone. And I say this from the stage. I've been saying this for like 3.5 years now. And recently, somebody asked me, well, what about in a factory? Like, you don't really want the guy working the line at the factory to be building his own automations. And I was like, I sure as hell do. You've seen it, in probably in videos of people working factories and they're bending over every 5 minutes to pick something up. And one guy will come in with like a stick with a hook he screwed on it. And that's like his automation. It changes the game for him. So my dad, when he was working as an EMT and a firefighter down by Chicago, he was part of this study. They were looking at all the timings for people getting victims from their medical distress to the hospital. And as you might guess, the shorter the amount of time it takes to get someone from triage to a hospital bed, the higher likelihood they'll survive because a hospital has doctors and medical equipment, everything you need. And being triaged on the side of the road or in your apartment, it's unlikely that the staff has everything they need to test and treat you right there. So they're looking at the data. They look at my dad's calls over several years as an ambulance EMT. And he is 10 minutes faster on average than the next EMT. So he is a full 10 minutes faster getting people from their medical emergency to a hospital bed. So they call him in. They're going to give him a commendation, right? So they call him in and they ask him, how are you doing this? And he tells them he automated it, right? There was a guy who wrote the rule book for how you're supposed to handle emergency situations. And, you have to listen for this vital. You have to ask these 6 questions. Then you have to stabilize. Then you have to put them in the ambulance. Then you start driving. So it's going to be 20 minutes, 40 minutes before we even start taking you to the hospital. And my dad condensed it down into like 2 questions and 2 vitals. And if he had those things, they were safe enough to just put in the ambulance and he would figure out the rest en route. And instead of a commendation, he got written up in his like permanent emergency record and he got in big trouble. And I remember how frustrated he was because the outcome we want is for people to survive, right? Who cares really if you do things a little differently if the outcome is better? And I think about that when I think about who should be automating and the fact that, if you guys run a podcast and I try to automate a solution to make your podcast better, and I'm just a guy who wrote a book about podcasts, my solution might be okay, but it's never going to be as good as the 2 people who run the podcast every week building their own automation or their own solution because you guys actually know what's important to keep and what we can get rid of in order to have a better outcome, a better podcast. And so I just want to shout out my dad. He's great, and I think of him often, and he's an inspiration to me and to many, and that's one of those examples that I think of all the time about like punishing people for improving the outcome instead of learning from them and letting them build from their own seat.
That's so good. Shout out to Papa Mabie,
Yep,
focusing
shout
on
out.
what's important. And so we have your dad to thank. I'm sorry because I have to say this story because I was cracking up. After we first met, you told me that you grew up in a household. Did you have like the Farmer's Five channels? Is that what is it?
Yeah, we watched like black and white TV land, like the vintage and vintage game show network. Yeah.
And it was like you'd like go to school and your friends and people in your grade would be talking about what happened on Survivor, and you'd be like, "Did you guys see what happened on I Dream of Jeannie last night? It was great."
I will never forget telling my friends how excited I was to have met Myron Florin, the accordion player on the Lawrence Welk show, and no one knew what the fuck I was talking about.
Oh, it's so good. Oh, cry. Do you remember when I called you right after that conversation, Zach, and I was still cracking up?
Yeah, I
Oh,
was
it's
dying. Oh my God.
so good.
I do love a good episode of I Love Lucy.
It's so yeah,
Who doesn't?
can't beat it.
Yeah,
Can't beat
can't
it.
beat it.
Emily, this was awesome. Thank you so much for your time. Like for fear of being over dramatic, this was definitely one of the most engaging and fun conversations I've ever had on this
Oh,
podcast. So thank you so much for your thought leadership and your personality. You're just like your positivity is infectious, and for people like me who sometimes get pulled a little bit too deep into the anxious mindset and maybe outlook into the future, this was good medicine. So thank you so
aw.
much for your time, and we can't wait to see you in just a few short weeks. CultureCon 2026. We think when this episode is getting aired, it'll be the day before your presentation.
Oh
So how
my
about
gosh.
that?
And if you listen to it, you should come up to me and whisper a secret password. It'll be Myron Florin, and I'll know at the conference that you listen to podcasts.
Lauren.
Emily, you're the best. We'll see you soon.
See you.
Thanks,
Thank you so
Emily.
much, you too. Bye-bye.
That's a wrap on this episode of the official CultureCon podcast.
If you got something out of it, share it with a friend, a teammate, or a fellow culture geek.
And don't forget to hit subscribe so you never miss an episode.
And if you want more ways to stay connected and inspired, check out our upcoming events page for a full listing of webinars, workshops, and conferences.
You'll find the link in the show notes, and we'd love to welcome you to a CultureCon event soon.
Until next time,